The words associated with a house are always related to each other. And when you dig down, you find that a simple notion joins them together. Every single keyword associated with the ninth house is a subset of three main categories. They are foreign travel, higher education, and philosophy. When you discover what these three things have in common, you've got the underlying meaning of the ninth. And once you find that underlying meaning, you can begin to read what it means to have Neptune or any other planet there. Foreign travel, higher education, and philosophy are in the same house because they all have the same effect on a person's thinking. They broaden the mind, enhance the vision, and make a person more worldly and sophisticated. Let's start with foreign travel, which is defined by me as travel that brings you into a different culture. This kind of travel gives the opportunity for comparison. And without that comparison, you never really understand your own way of life. When you spend enough time living in different countries, your vision expands and your tolerance rises because you notice that everywhere you go, people are more or less the same. They're mostly shaped by environment. You could have just as well been born there and entered the life they entered with the conditions they faced. You start to look at your own culture not as the right way, but as one of many ways. You also come to accept that there are certain universal laws that are true everywhere. What you learn in long-distance travel can open your personal life to options that you otherwise would never have thought of. Spending time in Asia might make you more appreciative of marriages that are based in something other than love. Or you might begin to see the benefits of collectivism in society. People with a heavy ninth house manifest the travel experiences that result in worldliness. Higher education does the same thing to a person's perspective. The ninth third axis in the wheel is known as the education axis. The third is primary education, and the ninth is secondary education. Just 100 years ago, primary education meant elementary school, and higher ed started at high school because most people only went to elementary. High school was meant to be preparation for the few who were actually going to college. Therefore, it broadened only some minds. Things have changed, so the houses have to shift a bit. Now you have to put primary school and high school in the third. That's because high school now performs one of the functions of the third, and that is the basic education that everyone gets. Only college now broadens your perspective beyond what's commonplace, so it goes in the ninth. And it's true that at the university level, your thinking is refined. It's really hard not to be enriched by 5 years of liberal arts education. Just like long-distance travel, university is about exposing you to ideas that are different from your own and therefore widening your views. The last item in this house is philosophy. Philosophy includes religion, the laws of society, the laws of the cosmos, politics, mythology, and all the gods. These things are meant to bring a bigger framework to mundane life and to imbue it with a meaning that you don't naturally perceive. Astrology falls into the ninth because it's a combination of mythology, philosophy, and universal laws. It's a language of symbols that makes life more meaningful. Astrology actually brings us to the simple notion that ties the ninth house together. Foreign travel, higher ed, and philosophy answer a question. Where does my little life fit in the grander scheme? All transits to the ninth bring opportunities for you to sort this out. Natal planets do the same thing for people who have them. So what happens when Neptune is found here? Remember, we're talking about the planet of no boundaries that's associated with art, spirituality, and transcendence. Well, firstly, the ninth is a house of the mind. And so having Neptune here can bring a fabulous imagination. It's a great placement for fantasy stories having to do with other worlds and other dimensions. When Neptune is in this segment of the wheel, God is seen as oceanic. God is the Tao, the way, an ineffable, unnameable current. They seek transcendence in religious experience. They want to be showered by God, lifted up by the Spirit. These natives also want spirituality to be a cleansing of the soul. They want God to be a redeeming force that washes guilt away. But Neptune dissolves boundaries, so they're not fond of organized and structured religions as much as just wanting a remote area where in the silence God can find them. A stick of incense, a candle, time, space, simplicity brings you closer to the Spirit. Their vision of God is usually minimal. They also tend to feel something divine in the arts and music, something heavenly. Likewise, Neptune is a planet of medicine and healing. So you find connections in the native's mind between health and spirituality. Illness is usually seen as a psycho-spiritual problem. Maybe they like using medicinal plants and psychedelics to increase awareness. Long trips take a lot of different forms. But the most interesting aspect of this Neptune is a sensitivity to the collective experience. This placement can speak for huge groups of people, perhaps even for humanity at large. It can get swept up in spiritual and artistic inspiration, religious ecstasy, intuitive vision, and sometimes even glimpses of the future. There's a deep capacity for reflection. So when these natives are creative, they can use art and writing and other forms of self-expression to speak to everyone. In other words, they're children of their time. Let's touch on the downside. Neptune is associated with two fish swimming away from each other. That means it's conflicted. It wants opposite things in the same moment. And if you watch carefully, you see that one of those fish has an extremely rigid streak. Add Neptune's naturally weak sense of self and put it in the house of religion, and you've got a placement that's at risk of being sucked into cults of all kinds. And these days, cults aren't just about religion or a special individual. Over the last 20 years, political parties have begun to function as cults too. In a related issue, this placement is also at risk of blindly following gurus. Why? Neptune is fond of seeing purity, and so Neptune can have that. They'll project perfection and moral authority onto a regular person. This irrational, illogical bent is why Neptune is considered the spiritual planet to begin with. It drops the intellect and the ego rather easily. But does Neptune do this in a toxic way? Or does it really go to higher elevations? When placed in the ninth, that's a lifetime question for Neptune's dark side. Thank you for watching Secrets from an Astrologer's Desk. Stay tuned for all the ways you can get in touch for a birth chart reading and full astrological services. I'm Joy. Neptune in the 10th house is next. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe.